Good morning, everybody. We're going to be starting in just a couple of minutes. Thank you so much. Okay, good morning, everybody. And good afternoon for those of you in Europe, and good night for those of you in Asia. But we're very excited to speak with you this morning. And what we are talking about today is trends for the influencer marketing industry for 2021 and beyond, of course. I'm very excited to be joined today by Nicole Wilson. Good morning, Nicole. How are you?
Hi, Paul. Yeah, so I'm Nicole. I've been at Affluence for 2 years now. I'm an account executive on the sales team, and I'm also an influencer outside of working at Affluence as well. I've been being an influencer for the last 5 years. My handle, as you can see on the presentation, is Darling and Dots. If you want to check it out, it's vintage inspired fashion and lifestyle.
Okay, great. And we're also joined today by Vivian Garnis. Good morning. Actually, good afternoon, Vivian.
Good morning, Paul. I am indeed based in Europe, so thanks for having me. My name is Vivian. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Affluence, a company that I've been growing since 2012. I've been doing influencer marketing for about 10 years now, and my background is working for tech companies and e-commerce companies.
Okay, great. It's December, so it's time to talk about trends for next year, of course. And we've identified four major trends that we want to talk about today. And the first is that influencer marketing is growing. And it's growing in new ways and interesting ways, and they're expanding influencer categories and expanding ways of using influencers. Secondly, we really think that it is important for all of the brands that we're speaking with to think about how they can build relationships that are authentic to really get their message out to the world. The third trend is data. Data, AI, machine learning. What are the different ways that you can leverage all of the data points that you have access to? And how can you utilize that to make the best choices? And the fourth trend is that everything is going to be video soon. And how do we prepare for that? How do we make sure that we can do that? A brief introduction to who we are here at Affluence. We work to develop smarter technology to decode influencer marketing. And we do that in a variety of different ways, but we're a global leader in influencer marketing. We are very data centric. We are very tech heavy and tech forward. We were founded back in 2013. We actually have offices all around the world, and we have over 23,000 users of our various products, and we work in over 45 different industries, which is really interesting. And we've been growing along with the industry because influencer marketing is a growing industry, a very much growing industry, even in the face of a global worldwide pandemic. Influencer marketing has seen growth in this past year. So Vivian, how and why has influencer marketing been growing so much over the time that you've been working in it?
Yeah, great question. So maybe before I get into the meat and potatoes of things, I can tell you a little bit of an embarrassing story, which is how I got to work in influencer marketing about 10 years ago, and how I saw the industry change basically year over year in that time frame. So first of all, I mentioned a couple of slides ago that my background was in e-commerce. When I was doing my first job, fresh out of college at a tech startup, I wanted with a friend to launch an e-commerce website on the side, which was a lot of fun to do. We had about zero expertise in anything but digital marketing. So we're quite confident that any product we would so choose, we would be able to sell it. And we decided to sell neckties. As you can clearly see, I'm still a big fan of neckties to this day. And we went for that product because there's no sizes, so it's pretty easy to keep an inventory under control. Number one, there's a very low required level of textile expertise to actually build the ties. So it felt like a good choice, and the profit margins are decent. So it felt like a good choice, right? What we failed to take into account, and I think Paul and I are a pretty good example of that nowadays, is that nobody wears ties anymore. Right? It's become even more true to this day. So all in all, a horrible, horrible idea. But yet, I had a box of 1,000 ties sitting in my living room that I desperately needed to get rid of. And it turns out that we're not the only ones to have this terrible, terrible idea. The online necktie market was very fragmented. There were loads of small companies doing exactly the same thing we were doing. And in a world where digital marketing is very much bid-based, the acquisition costs were basically sky high. And it was virtually impossible to be profitable on acquiring new clients. And so we tried, Kevin and I, to be good entrepreneurs, and we tried a number of things to get rid of that box of 1,000 ties. And most of these initiatives didn't quite work out. Some of them even failed quite spectacularly. What did work in the end of the day was to reach out to bloggers at the time, to fashion bloggers. So for fashion bloggers, that would basically, we ship them a tie, they would write a review, the review would turn into traffic, the traffic would turn into clients, and so on and so forth. And long story short, that's how we got rid of the tie. So with that, I learned a couple of lessons. Lesson number one, influencer marketing works, which is great. Lesson number two is that it's a very time-consuming process, because I was literally spending my nights and working spreadsheets. And the other thing is that it actually can be quite opaque, in the sense that when you don't have access to a whole lot of data, it's very hard to make informed decisions, and we ended up wasting a little bit of our tiny budget on some bloggers, unfortunately, right? So based on that, influencer marketing works because people like ads less and less with each passing days, right? It feels like all of us, we go out of our way to skip pre-roll our advertising, or to fast forward on VOD, or to basically install ad blockers on our Chrome browser. And so everything we do is to get rid of ads, right? And at the same time, a lot of people trust recommendations, and they contribute to social proof. And this is how, as much as we try to believe that the purchasing behavior is very irrational, it's very emotional, right? And it's all based on social proof that way. And following that, we've seen the industry mature in a number of ways. The number one way in which it's matured is in the choice of metrics. It feels like 10 years ago, it was all about vanity metrics. How many followers do you have? How many page views does your blog have? And things like that. And as the industry matured, we went a little bit down the funnel, if I can make an imaginary funnel in the image right here. And we went to engagements, how many likes, how many comments am I bringing to the table, right? And now it feels like in the recent past, we've been going more and more towards ROI, towards actual conversions. How much money am I making with that activation channel? Which is, I think, the ultimate test for the industry, and the ultimate proof that influencer marketing is gaining in maturity. Now, all of this has been obviously accelerated by COVID. A lot of brands have shifted their offline budgets to online, which makes a lot of sense in an age where people can't get out of their homes, and which also dramatically accelerated e-commerce penetration, right? So not only people are investing a lot more online than they've ever done in the past, they are trying to sell online a lot more than they've ever done, right? Which results now in a massive industry that's some $15 billion-ish strong, and that's very fast growing. I think the reports that I've read were about 32% compounded year-over-year growth, which is stratospheric.
Yeah, I mean that's a huge number, right? Especially when you're thinking about businesses that are really trying to say, how do I make it in this world today? And what they're seeing is what you saw 10 years ago. with neckties, we're now seeing in um, fashion, we're seeing it in lifestyle, we're seeing it in food service. All these industries that are struggling because people can't go to the store, they're pivoting hard toward e-commerce, and those people don't really care how many Twitter followers an influencer has, but what they care about is how many sales they can drive. And one number that I think is really key here is this McKinsey study that basically said that the acceleration of e-commerce in the last year has been roughly equivalent to what they had expected over 10 years. Just the sheer amount of money that people are spending online, the amount of time they're spending online, and they need that social validation, because where you may have gone to a store before and a salesperson can say, oh, that shirt looks good on you, you don't have that anymore. So you need to make sure that you have somebody who can kind of give you that halo effect and say, no, you should buy that shirt. That's really interesting as well.
What's extra interesting about that McKinsey study that you just referred to is that it's not just a fluke, right? It's not just a temporary shift in e-commerce behavior that's going to go back to normal as soon as the vaccine is out and people can get out of their places, right? It's actually proven to be a longer term and a very deep shift into the way people approach this. So super interesting indeed.
Okay. Now, one of the things that have happened as the industry is maturing is that the different types of influencers have just exploded. And it's really great. It's a great time to be an influencer. And I'm really excited to have Nicole here because she can really bring a sort of an inside perspective of what it's like to be an influencer. So Nicole, can you talk about how this shift has affected the influencer community?
Yeah, definitely. So like you and Vivian mentioned, the industry is growing and there's really space for anybody that's creating quality content to be an influencer. And like Vivian mentioned, it's not just about how many followers that influencers have nowadays, because brands can also repurpose content as well. So if you're a smaller influencer, you're creating really great content for brands, they can reuse that on their social channels, their website, newsletters, paid Facebook ads as well. So that's one aspect to it. And then, when they also speak to their audience, even though they have a smaller, following size, especially if it's something more niche, their audience really values what they're saying. They feel like it's more like a recommendation from a friend rather than like a big celebrity trying to sell them something. So
yeah,
I think, yeah.
And just to jump off of that, right? Everyone's image of influencer marketing are these giant mega influencers, but as you're saying, the content really resonating with the consumer is really what the brands are looking for these days.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Nicole is exactly right. And if you zoom out and try to conceptualize a little bit, essentially what this means is for brands, you need to work with larger volumes of smaller influencers, right? And that's very much the way to go in a way. And that comes with both challenges and opportunities. And the challenges is the more option you have, there's a little bit of choice paralysis, right? It can be a daunting choice. Who do I work with? What kind of data points do I base my decisions off, and so on and so forth. That can be, and the other thing is the assumption that if you need to work with 10x the amount of influencers, it's going to be 10x the amount of work, right? That's something that some advertisers hold very true. Thankfully, that's no longer true in the sense that companies like Upfluence offering technology to actually streamline and scale and automate the influencer marketing workflow that makes that the extra influencer you get to work with is only marginally more work than it would have been years ago. So I think some of the challenges and most of the challenges are being addressed by technology, streamlining the process, number one, and number two, providing the right data points to enable brands to make their own decisions, right? But more interestingly, even with volume comes opportunities, as I mentioned. And those of you who did a little bit of statistics are familiar with the 80-20 law, the Pareto law. And basically, that's a law that says that only a fraction of the input is responsible for a majority of the output, and that can be represented on the curve. And what that creates as a situation is that it's been used all over by marketing professionals all over the world for a variety of disciplines, right? For search marketing, for email marketing. And basically, that says that there's the head tail, which are the people that have the most visibilities, in our case, the largest macro influencers, the celebrities. And then there's the longer tail, which are all the micro, nano, pico influencers, even, like the very tiny people. And that's an interesting shift there as well, because for many, many years, it was all about the celebrity influencers. They were the most visible, which is quite logical, right? They have the largest communities, and as such, they were reached out to by many brands. Some of them, several dozens of brands were reaching out to them every day, right? So that creates a couple of challenges right there, right? Number one, as a brand, you need really to stand out from the crowd, from the other brands. There's a little bit of competition, and the consequence of that is that creates instant inflation on prices, right? Because the bargaining power is so much in the control of the influencer, they're basically able to name their own prices, and that worked for a while. But as industry matured, as I mentioned a couple of slides ago, it became more and more about ROI. How much return on investment can I generate as a brand? And if there's a huge inflation of prices, then that deteriorates quite organically your ROI, right? So that's how the advent of all the micro influencers and longer tail became really important, right? There's also other reasons why it's, I think, a great opportunity for brands. Number one, the social media algorithms and the way they push the content in feed is actually inversely proportional to the size of the community to a degree, right? Meaning the larger your community, the least you are likely to be pushed on basically the feeds of the people that follow you. It's been very much discussed. It's been a little bit controversial. Even some people make the assumption that it's because it's an incentive basically that Facebook, Instagram, YouTube give to brands so that they invest a little bit of more ad dollars basically to this. But the case remains that it's better to work with 10 influencers worth 10,000 followers than one influencer worth 100,000 followers, right? Organically, which is going to be greater. And if you look in academia and the academic research world, there's this concept of editorial congruence. I'm going to echo a little bit what Nicole said earlier. Basically, the closer the content of the brand, of the influencer, and the interest of the audience are, the greater the performance. And if you have a lot more choice because you're reaching out to greater volumes of influencers, you're in a situation where you can actually be pickier not only in the performance, but only in the editorial, and really go after the influencers that are in your niche, that you have the greatest bandwidth, and when you share the values and so on and so forth. And
I mean, I think that's no. That's hugely important, and that actually gets to our next big trend for 2021, which is authenticity leads the way. So Nicole was talking about, and I do want to get back to this. I think I cut you off for a little bit, but Nicole has a very specific brand. She has a very specific image as an influencer, and that brand and that image, when it merges with the right brand who wants to talk about something, can really go very far. And I actually want to go back to this Coca-Cola shot that Nicole had, because I think it's really great. Where, this is just Nicole sitting out on the street drinking a vintage Coca-Cola. This is a great piece of content, and brands would love to have things like that. And so I think when we're talking about this, we need to get back to, as you're saying, what is authentic? What is the niche? And authenticity leads that way. And let's talk about this for a second. There is real damage that can be done to a brand if they go in the wrong direction, right? We've definitely seen this. We've seen opportunities where a brand has worked with an influencer, and the influencer put out content that they obviously didn't care about the brand, and it hurt both the brand and the influencer. But can we talk a little bit about why we need to stay away from that inauthentic content?
100%. So it's such an interesting concept because there are many variables at play here. The number one variable is a lot of brands think about influencer marketing with an extra level of control, right? They want to control the narrative, they want to control what is being said, and so on and so forth. And as such, they basically put words in the mouth of the influencers. And that's not necessarily a good idea. That's even oftentimes a bad idea, right? The entire point of influencer marketing, it's indirect marketing. You're addressing the consumer via a proxy, via an intermediary, which is an influencer that happens to know their audience very well, to own that very community, and basically know what works and what doesn't. So as a brand, number one, you need to understand that you need to surrender a control over what is being said and how it's being said, and that's actually a good thing. It's good for you. It's good for the influencer. It's good for everyone.
Well, it's good. I mean, honestly, yeah, you don't want to be in a situation where you're destroying the creativity of the person who's built the network too much, because that'll kill you.
100%. The other variable that comes at play here is a lot of people are looking for scale, and they think, well, it will be a lot easier for me to scale my influencer marketing program if I don't send the product to the influencer. If instead of he or she producing their own content, I give she or him, sorry, a picture to publish directly, and so on and so forth. And that's very detrimental to everyone involved, right? To the brand, because they don't get the performance they expect from the publication. The influencer, who deteriorates his editorial quality towards the followers, and the followers because they get low quality content, right? So that's the second thing. And this actually, we can measure it to a degree, right? And one thing we're very interested, two data points we're very interested in. Number one, the saturation rate, meaning out of 100 posts, how many are sponsored posts, versus organic posts. It's not necessarily a bad thing to do sponsored posts, right? In a lot of ways, it's actually very successful if done right. But there's actually a fatigue of the audience, and you can see that the engagement rates tend to decrease quite early on when you get to 7-15% of sponsored content as a saturation rate, right? That's number one. Then number two is the efficacy rate, right? How efficient, how much engagement do you do for a sponsored post versus an organic post? And what we see is that the best performing influencers like Nicole here actually overperform for their sponsored post, which is a proof and a testament to the fact that they involve a lot of their time and skill and knowledge on how to reappropriate the brand message and how to turn it into something different and something great. Right? So that's my first 2 points about inauthentic content.
And can I just jump in with one thing here? Actually, in the Upfluence platform, we give you a good idea of how often influencers are mentioning a brand and how well that content performs. So what a lot of our clients are curious about is they want influencers that have a proven good track record, because that proven good track record shows that they take the time to create that authentic content. Even if they are, even if they've contracted to do it, they take the time to really show their love for the brand.
Okay, wonderful. The other dimension to authenticity is actually related to fraud, in my mind, right? With every new industry that's basically being created ex nihilo in only a few short years, there's always a cat and mouse game between what people are doing to bend the rules and the actual rules, right? And what that creates is that we've seen the industry being plagued with quite a few fraudulent behaviors, right? And many of them are click fraud or engagement fraud or follower fraud and these kind of things. The good news is that help is on the way to a degree, right? Help is on the way from the social media platforms themselves, which is a great thing in the sense that they actually put in place some checks and balances to flush out some accounts that are obviously fraudulent, which is great. And also the influencer marketing platforms, I think, do an increasingly important job in this to identify the percentage of real fake followers, of real fake engagements, and to basically weed out the fraud from this whole equation, right? But one way that addresses both of these points in my mind, and I'm going to let you expand on that, Paul, is basically to work with people that already gravitate around your brand, that know who you are, that know what you do, already own your product from time to time, and can actually are your best potential ambassadors moving forward as a brand.
Yeah, I mean, one of our biggest trends in 2020 that we only see growing is leveraging your brand's fans as ambassadors. And so throughout 2020, we've developed a whole series of new tools to examine brands' Instagram followers, to find people who are on your website, or to even integrate with certain third-party tools like Shopify and Klaviyo, for instance, where we could actually look at some of the people that you're already in contact with and find out if those people are influencers themselves. Because if you want authenticity, you're going to really find it from someone who's already spending their money to purchase what you have. I'll actually tell you a story that came up with a friend of mine. They just started their own candle business. They started their own candle business, and it's very cute. I'll give them a plug. It's called Truby Hill, and they're two great guys on the North Shore of Long Island. Well, they woke up 2 nights ago or 2 mornings ago, and they had orders from all over the country, and they didn't understand why. It just turned out that Jenna Bush Hager lives in their neighborhood, and she has 1.2 million followers on Instagram. She went to the bookstore where they're selling their candles, and she did a story and put out the candles for that. This is a perfect example of they would have had no way of knowing that their customer was an influencer. Their customer just chose to put this out to the world. Imagine if you could leverage that. You have a product that somebody already loves, and you can actually push them to create content on your behalf. That is going to read as authentic. It's going to drive sales, and it's going to help both your image and their image, right? Because influencers love talking about things that they actually have a stake in. So that's really good.
Cool story.
It's true. It happened this morning. So, and within that, right, it becomes all about those long-term relationships, right? So how do you then take that authenticity and take it to the next level, right? I'll say this from time to time. A lot of the times people talk about influencer marketing. Oh yeah, can you give me a shout out? Can I get a shout out? I'm looking for shout outs. That's very 2015 kind of thoughts. And when we're talking to our clients, we're talking to them about building a network of people who want to pass along your message because they love your brand. And this has benefits for everyone. And Nicole, I know you have a couple of long-term relationships with a couple of brands. Can you give us a little sense about that?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I work with several clothing brands that each season when the new line comes out, they'll send me some product and I'll take photos in and post. I've done a collaboration with Aperol Spritz in the past. I did that a few years in a row. So like Paul mentioned, these long-term collaborations are definitely, what's trending. And yeah, they're beneficial from both the brand and the influencer side. From the influencer side, they don't have to go out and be looking for new deals every month if they have these long-term, collaborations that continue, throughout the year.
And Nicole, just to go into a little more about like some of the fashion brands, how are they compensating you for those posts? Is it I know there's a mixture, but I know that there are some brands where they just send you product. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. With most of the clothing brands that I work with, it's just them sending me free product to post.
And I think that's really important for a lot of brands to understand is that you can get great collaborations, especially long-term collaborations, if people like what you're selling just through product. And Vivian, can you talk a little bit about how this helps from the brand side?
Yeah, of course. So I think that's a very important concept, right? That brands are graduating from a campaign, which is a very finite thing, with a beginning and an end, to more of a process, to something ongoing and recurring, right? And when you think about it and when you zoom out, it's just good business, right? That's a good way to it's a good amortization of the resources that you've put into what would have been your campaign or your program, right? Meaning all the time you spend working on strategy, on the brief, on influencer identification, influencer activation, and so on and so forth. If you did it only once, or only on repeated occasions through the year, that's not capitalizing enough on all the hard work and all your investments, basically upfront investment that you've done here. So thought number one. Thought number two, it's actually a great way to build a unit economics, right? And when you're growing a business, what you want to have is a marketing channel that's repeatable, that you can scale, and usually it's based on a certain number of metrics, right? That's what I call unit economics. And that's really something you can do at scale with large influencers if you pull it into a recurring program. Because if, as a brand, I send every quarter a number of products to Nicole, I know how much it costs me, I know how the performance evolves month over month or quarter over quarter from Nicole's corporation, and that's actually a great way to say, oh, so my cost per engagement is X, my cost per conversion is Y, my ROI is Z, right? And that's a fantastic way for you to navigate and to manage your influencer community on a recurring basis, so that you can actually have a very compounding, high-performing influencer marketing machine that basically grows month over month, right?
Yeah, and we put up a slide here just to show the geometry of the thing. If you can just keep adding a group of influencers to your group, don't try to get everywhere you need to be in month one. The key is, how do you build that megaphone so that when the message goes out, you have all these people who are willing to take that message to their followers. That's where you can really find some powerful moves, as it were.
And that's very much how you can multiply your output with the same marketing team, right? Because you capitalize on all the previous effort, you can actually build up on the previous month every month, which with constant input, you can demultiply your output, or if you're an agency, you can lower your input to a constant output, and you can maximize the time that you spend on other activities for your clients.
And I think this is actually a really important point that Vivian's bringing up, which is, we talk a lot about ROI for a brand, and brands are more in the ROI space. And for years and years, agencies have been more, brought certain things to do campaigns on behalf of clients. And yes, there have been performance marketing agencies and things like that, but that is really coming more powerfully into influencer marketing. We have our own agency side here at Upfluence, but we also work with quite a few agencies on our software platform. And our clients are coming to us and they want to know, if I spend X amount of dollars, how much can I guarantee in sales, or what types of sales can I be looking for? And that's a question that an agency needs to be able to answer, as well as a brand, as you're going out to talk to people. And Upfluence does give you the tools to make those conversations and to be able to do that for your clients. Okay, so all right, and that segues nicely into more data equals more ROI. And this is, we are awash in data as a society at this point. That brings us a lot of opportunities. It brings us a few challenges, and we do want to talk about that. But the data is everywhere right now. We have customer data. And customer data is wonderful. It enables brands to really understand their clients better, to work towards them. And it also helps give you a sense of what are the types of campaigns that are working for your customers, right? If you are not tracking your campaigns, especially influencer marketing campaigns, it's going to become very difficult to have a good sense of how well it's going. And also, that data makes sure that you are getting that authentic content, right? So if you have somebody who has 1 million followers and they post something on your behalf and nobody shows up, there's a disconnect somewhere in there, and tracking that is really important. Social media data has gotten more complicated to get. The platforms have been more stringent over the years. They had a lot of bad publicity over the years, whether that was Cambridge Analytica 4 years ago, some other things that are complicated. So you do need a partner. You're not going to be able to get all of the brand information or all of the influencer information that you may have been able to get in the past from the social media networks. And that's where someone like Upfluence can really help. And we do have access to our own data sets that can help you in that area. But now, once you're awash in data, you need to have something that helps you make sense of it. So what we have here at Upfluence is an entire machine learning and artificial intelligence team that is working with the data that we have, because you need to actually create that automation. You need to understand what is important, what types of data sets you have. I'll give you one little example of something that we launched this year, which is influencer recommendation. We now have the capacity, if you have a list of about 20 or 30 influencers, we can tell you, oh, you like those 30 influencers? Well, let me look through our database of over 4 million and find some other people. So instead of you diving through the haystack to find the needles, we have the machine learning team doing that for you. The other thing that is extremely important is brand safety. We work with quite a few alcohol brands, so we need to be able to talk about the correct age ranges for people, content restrictions, all of these types of things. We also work with many brands in heavily regulated industries. And AI and machine learning can help make sure that you're not going to end up crossing the wrong line or end up having a knock on the door that you don't want from a regulator at some point. And we are seeing more regulation. Now, that is a good thing, right? Influencer marketing is becoming a little less of the Wild West. We're growing into a mature industry. So you need to make sure that you have the tools in place to protect you from the regulators if they come calling, right? So I'll give one example. In our Upfluence platform, you can actually take a look at the drafts that influencers want to put out before they put them out, so that you can actually say yes, as opposed to playing catch up and saying, wait, what did you post? That's a heart sinking moment when somebody post something and you're just like, I don't want to see that, right? So we give you that opportunity to say yes to the influencer before they launch, and I think that that's really important. The last thing is all of the legislation that's out there, whether that's GDPR in Europe or any of the other types of legislation to protect customer data, you need to make sure that you're on the right side of all of those lines, and you're sort of acting within the rules that are laid out. So that's really important as well.
A couple of extra
Go
points,
for
Paul,
it.
if you
Go
don't
for
mind.
it. Oh, yeah.
I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I'm going to tie this to ROI as well. Automation is absolutely crucial in the sense that the most, low added value task, the more low added value task you can actually automate and get out of the way, the higher your ROI, because your return on investment will factor a number of things: the cost of influencers, the cost of technology, the cost of products you may send or shipping, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, it's going to be about the man hours in your $50 an hour marketing manager that might be doing the campaigns, right? And so for all these reasons, automation is really key to keep the ROI as high as possible. The other thing regarding regulation is it's actually changing quite quick. We've seen GDPR happen virtual overnight. Then a couple of other instances, CFAA in California have been duplicating the effort, and I do believe that's a great thing. A great thing for people, for consumers, great thing for brands as well, because it brings a frame and some rules. But it might be subjected to change very quickly. We've heard last week that Facebook was under strict scrutiny from the FTC for an antitrust lawsuit, one of which was, hey guys, you did not make easy access to your data for third-party developers, right? So these are the things that might actually change the access to data and legal framework that goes around data.
Absolutely. And of course, earlier this year, TikTok, which is the fastest growing social network, almost was disallowed in the United States. So, we have to roll with it, and we have to make sure that we understand the marketplace and what's out there at the moment.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, and speaking of TikTok, video is everything. There is no social network where you can post now where you can't post video. I mean, maybe that's not true. Maybe I should be careful. But all of the major social networks that are out there accept video content, and it's going to lead the way. And so what I'd like to do is actually show you a couple of videos of Nicole's. So Nicole, which one? Why don't we do Beth Harmon first? So do you want to give an intro to this one?
Sure. So I guess just to give a little background first, I just started a TikTok back in March when quarantine hit, basically like every other millennial. So I just started, posting TikToks there. I've grown my social channel there now. I have about 6,000 followers. I actually just got my first paid collaboration on TikTok, which is pretty cool. Brands are definitely starting to move there. But, and then with, then Reels came out because they have to try and compete with TikTok since it's so popular. So I created this video that Paul's about to show. I posted both on TikTok and Reels, but Reels actually pushed it out. It was a featured video, so it actually went viral, and it ended up getting 3 million views, which is crazy. But to give you some context, it's basically an outfits kind of video, inspired by the Queen's Gambit. If anybody watched that on Netflix, so
I think everybody watched it on Netflix. I saw a story that said that the most popular item in 6 months on eBay is going to be a huge chess set. Okay,
yeah.
so why don't we watch this one first? Oh, I gotta get this in. All right, so that's from Reels, but this is on TikTok. So and Nicole, you had been on Instagram for quite a while, right? How many followers do you have on Instagram right now?
So on Instagram, I have 14,000 followers.
Okay.
But yeah, I've been on Instagram, yeah, for, I guess I started, kind of curating my feed more uh, around like the end of 2015, beginning of 2016. So
Okay. And now, do you want to introduce this one? Because this one I actually came across. It just showed up on my FYP on TikTok. There you go. See, I actually know what an FYP is. But do you want to introduce this one?
yeah, so this video Paul's about to show, I last year I had gone to the TWA, which is a hotel that reopened in New York City at JFK Airport. So I just made this video. I was bored and going through my camera roll, trying to see what I could kind of cobble together to post a video on TikTok. So I made this with just old footage that I had. So
Yeah, and this is the landmark TWA terminal at JFK that was designed by Eero Saarinen, I think, right? So,
exactly, yeah.
All right.
Hey guys, I had a lot of questions about my video on the TWA, so I wanted to make a follow-up. TWA was an airline that operated from 1930 to 2001. In 1962, they opened a terminal in JFK Airport. It was abandoned after the airline shut down, but last year they reopened it restored to its 1960s glory. Though it is a hotel, you don't have to be a guest to check it out. There's the Paris Cafe, which you can make a reservation at. There's also the Connie, which is this plane turned into a bar. Yep, you can actually drink on here.
All right. That's very cool. And I definitely, sorry. Next slide. So that's and you can sort of see the creativity that's there, and that's how we get to this next idea, which is that the future is really video, right? And Vivian, I know you have some stats to back that up. So you want to go ahead?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not exactly a new idea, right? I think most people have seen it coming. Even like I think it was Facebook's VP of EMEA, Nicola Mendelsohn, that said it 5 years ago that the video was going to be the #1 content type on Facebook by 2021. So yeah, some people, hindsight is 2020, but some people actually saw it coming a lot better than we did. What's more harder to read is how much, right? And so some stats to support that claim that video is a mega trend and that's becoming the dominant way to consume content online. And number one is that Americans on average watch digital video for 2 hours a day, which is already a substantial amount when you think it's an average. And it's twice that amount for Netflix subscribers, right? So we're talking 4 hours a day on average, 28 hours a week, right? Almost a full-time job, just to put things into perspective. Online video accounts for nearly 3/4 of all internet traffic as of 2020. And it's expected to reach 82% by 2022, which is incredible. And that trend has been following not only desktop, not only mobile, but a multiplicity of devices. Mobile has just tipped as well. 55% of mobile video traffic is video, sorry. So that's the first interesting thing. But if you zoom out and look at the market perspective, there's changes happening on both the supply side and the demand side, right? On the supply side, if you look at the media landscape, right, there's a lot more content today than there ever were, right? Because there are more internet users, so more UGC, more user-generated content. There's also more MCNs, multi-channel networks, more curators, more aggregators, more streaming services. I think now we have to juggle 5 or 6 just to keep up to date with all the shows we want to see. And those streaming services have been given increasingly more power with time, right? I think there's a recent news that we've all heard that box office movies are now going to be made available on streaming services, which is an incredible news that a lot of us didn't imagine happen this year, right? But 2020 keeps impressing us. On the demand side, the social media component of it is no different, right? YouTube has over a billion users worldwide now. TikTok is expected to reach 1.2 billion. Snapchat is several hundreds of millions. There are also many alternatives that we Westerners sort of don't necessarily have in mind, but Youku in China, which is the Chinese YouTube, and let's say to simplify this, is absolutely huge. Vimeo, which is a video platform that seems secondary. I think they recently broke out $100 million in ARR, which is absolutely crazy. And there are some countries with local specificities, right? I'm thinking, I'm calling from France right now. I'm French, as you can definitely hear. Dailymotion is our YouTube. It's still quite large in France, even though it's no longer dominant. And even if you look at the social networks that were traditionally not necessarily full video, Instagram, for example, it used to be exclusively picture. They progressively introduced more features to carousel, but were still feature image-based. And progressively they moved to video. And now if you look at all the recent feature improvements, the Reels, the IGTV, the stories, in the wrong order, but you get the idea. They are all 100% video based, right? Which I think is a very strong sign that what the market wants and what the demand is like, right? On top of which, still zooming out, I think video is gaining momentum. Even though it's been long in the making. It's been huge in Asia for ages. I think we're moving to live video as well and live streaming. That's been existing for companies like Twitch for a long time, but now it's gaining most platforms. Even LinkedIn, you can do live streams, and I think we right now are a good example of that as well. And now we're even closing the loop with live shopping, right? Not only live streaming, but soon most platforms will be enabling their streamers to actually generate purchases directly and very much close the conversion loop here. So my 2 cents is that it will create a new gold rush on social media where, we've seen the horizon full of Vine, Periscope, Meerkat, and so on and so forth. So new platforms are going to still keep emerging, TikTok being the perfect example of this. There's going to be a new creator ecosystem around it. We've all heard of Patreon, which is a fantastic way for creators to monetize. There's other companies, Cameo and whatnot, which are, I think, great, good opportunities that growing organically with that sort of gold rush. And there's an entire industry basically around consumer video tools as well, filters, video editing, and so on and so forth. So how does this impact influencer marketing? The fact is, it's following these exact same trends, right? It's going in the exact same direction. Content is going to be more and more video-based in the future, and the performance will be expected to basically, again, bring ROI to the conversation in the video world, right? So yeah, that's my 2 cents on this.
Yeah, and one last thing about video, I would just like everyone to take a moment and understand that the three of us right now are having this conversation on Zoom. Zoom, I think I saw recently, is now higher valued than like all of the airlines in the world or something crazy like that. Yeah. And I've started to see. You mentioned Cameo. Cameo is starting to sell Zoom meetings as well, so not just content. So I could start to see some of this video done in as part of influencer marketing campaigns as well, with Zoom rooms and things like that. It's really an interesting time to be living in. So one little thing that I want to offer to everyone on this call is that we actually have a free Chrome plugin that you can use on Chrome, and it will give you data points about people across all of these different social networks that we've been speaking about: Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. And you can download it very easily. I think we'll make sure that we have a link to it in the chat. What that'll let you do is have some sense of the data points that you're going to need as you look at things. Obviously, it's just a bit of a taste of what you can have with our full platform, but we want to offer that to you right now. I know we're running a little behind on time, but I do think we have some time to answer a few questions. And I know we've gotten a lot of good questions from the room, so I'm gonna scroll through here and read a couple of them.
So it looks like the first two questions are actually B2B oriented, right, which is fun. So one SaaS company in a niche market, purely B2B, wants to know how influencer marketing could work, and another one expressed difficulties finding micro-influencers. Right, so from the top of my head, a couple of thoughts. Number one, you need obviously to look where your audience is based, right? Um, meaning meaning your audience is not necessarily going to be on Instagram and TikTok if it's very B2B oriented. It's more likely to be on blogs, to be on LinkedIn, to be on Twitter. So number one, you have to sort of rethink the general consensus that for consumer companies that this is where the company is. Number one, the audience is. Number two, in the way you reach out, you have to keep a couple of things in mind. One thing to keep in mind is these people who are B2B influencers, who might have a large audience in a very specific area of expertise, they are not necessarily going to accept monetization for ethical reasons or because they simply can't. Meaning, if they have built their entire career on doing one thing, they are not going to monetize that, and they are not going to basically say good things about something they don't necessarily think good things, right? So in that sense, it's better to approach them not in a pay per post capacity or not in a sponsored capacity, but just say, hey, here's what we do, what do you think, right? And if you have positive feedback, try to incentivize the person to mention this. But that's so a key difference in identification, a key difference in activation. But we've had success with B2B companies. We worked with an IT services company. We've worked with a banking service company, and you can have impactful influencer marketing even in the B2B world.
Yeah, no, and just so little pitch for us. We do have an entire content marketing team that could actually help with that. So if you want to reach out, we can talk to you about it. So we got a question from Megan Wells, and I want to throw this to Nicole first, but the question is, curious to know your recommendations on how to communicate deliverables to your influencer in a way that keeps the content authentic, and what asks would make the content inauthentic. So, Nicole, you want to take a crack at that first?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I think this kind of goes back to, I think, what you're talking about earlier, you and Vivian. You don't want to give influencers a script because that comes across as very inauthentic. And the reason people follow influencers is because they like their style or their personality or whatever it is. So I think it's always good to give guidelines when you're reaching out to influencers. Like, if you want them in the photo, or if you want more of like a flat lay, or if you don't want them to shoot at night, or something like that, but you don't want to say, hey, I want you to say exactly this. And you can definitely give them a hashtag or certain like talking points, but let them talk about it in their own way and their own style.
Yeah, and one thing I think helps with this is campaign briefing. I'm a big believer in sending out a good campaign brief, but as Nicole's saying, and what Vivian was saying, a campaign brief that lays out the parameters of the campaign without being too dictatorial. I think that goes really well for the influencers. Do you have anything you want to add to that one, Vivian?
No, you guys did a great job.
All right, great. Emma Brooks asks, any tips on finding micro and nano influencers that have actual influence over their audience? The market is so saturated, it's a little daunting for a brand just starting out. Vivian, you want to give some thoughts on that?
Of course. So that's a great question, right? The daunting aspects to the volume of influencers, the quantity of influencers. I would say one good proxy, one good predictor of having influence over their audience would be engagement rates. For micro and nano influencers, you can easily find 2-digit engagement rates, even if you know nothing else about that influencer. That's a good indication that he or she is likely to perform, right? And so if you find a bunch of nano influencers that have 20+% of engagement rate, that's a very strong indication. I would say that's number one. Number two, I would say resides in volume. You need to accept the fact that some influencers are not going to be willing to work with you for whatever reason, and it's fine. It's okay, right? It's not an insult to your brand or anything like that. And so what we usually recommend is to find a multiple. If you want to activate, let's say, 100 influencers, actually identify 10x that, right? Identify 1,000, and as you reach out to them and as you create a relationship, try to be as reciprocal as possible, but don't expect 100% conversions, so to speak, on this one.
Yeah, and I know that number sounds high, right? How do you find 1,000 influencers?
Yeah.
Um, for us, it's not. Using our platform, you can find 1,000 influencers that fit your brand and really do that in a way that saves you time and allows you to get that ROI that you're looking for. So, really look for those influencers, set the parameters for who you're looking for, and then reach out to them at scale. And that's the way that you can really make it work. So, Nicole, the Youth Theater of Montreal has a specific question for you. How do you approach working with smaller businesses as an influencer, I'm assuming? And how do your followers tend to respond in terms of DMs, comments, shares when you do sponsored content?
Mm-hmm. Well, for me, I don't do a ton of sponsored content since, being an influencer is not my full-time job. It's more of, something I do for fun. So I try and be really selective with, the brands that I work with. And if you check out, my Instagram or my TikTok, you can probably tell I have a very certain specific aesthetic. So I make sure the brands I work with fit that aesthetic. And also that whatever I post about too has some sort of value. And I think it's something my audience will be interested in. So I guess to answer the first question, if a smaller brand reaches out to me, I usually, will, negotiate my rates and give them a good deal because I know if they're just starting out, they might not have as big of a budget. I'm more open to doing gifting and stuff like that. And then I guess to answer the second part, like in terms of you know the response from my audience, like I said, I try and initially make sure I'm going to do a collaboration that my audience will be interested in anyway. But I think because I am a smaller micro influencer, my audience is pretty engaged with me, and there's a lot of people I regularly like will comment with and DM with, because I feel like they find it more approachable because I am like a smaller influencer. So
Okay.
hopefully that answered the question.
Um, Go
Just to
ahead.
add one thing, if you don't mind, Nicole. 100% agree with what you just said, even though I'm not an influencer myself, so it's easy to agree on that. What we measured and what the data shows is that actually playing the small business cards helps you lower the rates of influencer when you work for a sponsored post. We've seen that a lot, even though we surprisingly saw an opposite behavior as well, which is if you're a huge brand, if you're Coca-Cola, influencers are actually likely to lower their rates as well because they want to be associated with the prestige of a brand, or if you're very well known as well, right? So that sort of does a bell curve. If you're a small business, it's good for you. You are going statistically to get lower rates. If you're a huge business as well, right? So bad news if you are somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. So the L3 agency asks, I think it's a comment and a question, but they talk about how they're an agency that likes to deliver authentic content, and they say their clients are not always as vested in authenticity and building a real relationship, even though they believe that relationships create currency. So I'm gonna take that question and put it in a slightly different way, which is how do you go about convincing a client that authenticity in those relationships matter? Or how do we think about convincing people that let's build for tomorrow, not just for this next campaign?
Mm-hmm. So, do you want to take this one, Nicole, or do I go?
I think that's more for you.
Okay. I was not sure who you were addressing that towards. So it's true, and I understand the struggle. Number one, it's true that it's hard to put an immediate ROI on a relationship, right? Because that's one of these fuzzy things that's not tangible enough, and that might come across as a waste of time for a client. So I feel your pain, L3 agency. Number one. Number two. One way to prove that it's not wasted time is to sort of buy yourself a longer time frame and show, okay, these are the influencers I actually created a relationship with. I had a very reciprocal, a lot of reciprocity in the relationship that we've built, and this is how well they delivered, right? Because what the data shows is that influencers are very engaged, are more likely to work for free, are more likely to work for a lesser amount if it's a sponsored post, and will publish more frequently and more content. And if you combine those three things, that actually the the result of having a great relationship with influencer actually drives ROI, right? And if not, the relationship itself. So if your client has a little patience and you're able to start building that program, you are going to show them the facts and convince them that it's not wasted time at all, right? One way you can do that actually quicker maybe is to A/B test, right? Saying, okay, we're going to reach out of the blue to these influencers. They've never heard of you. They don't know who you are. We're going to reach out to these influencers with whom we have an existing relationship. And let's compare how likely they are to work with you, at what kind of price, what kind of engagement they'll generate, what volume of content they'll produce, right? And even before going to the conversions and sales and ROI, just that will speak for itself.
Okay. I know we're getting to the end, but we have a couple more questions, so we're going to hit these a little faster, but maybe we'll respond more in the chat. So we have a brand, I think, Lou Cullinan talks about how it's hard to get micro and nano influencers to follow through sometimes. They talk about how they have a beauty product that takes up to 3 months, and sometimes the influencers stop in the middle. And how do you hold those people accountable? I'm going to answer this somewhat quickly, only because I think I have an okay answer for it, which is, this goes back to the campaign brief. This goes back to compensation. There are certain things that people like as sampling, but a 3-month beauty regimen, I don't know that you can always get them on sampling, right? And this is one of the issues with a sampling campaign. You can't control the results. So if you need those results and you need to keep people accountable, set it up as a paid collaboration. And the other thing I want to mention is affiliation. So for beauty campaigns, I love affiliation, where the influencer could put this out to their audience and potentially get a commission on it. I saw one of our commission partners actually in the chat, which is Refersion, who we also have an integration with. And I think affiliation could be a good way to do that, so that then the influencer has an incentive to continue. We're at an hour, but I want to answer 1 or 2 more questions. The first one is, the National Parks Conservation Association says they're a nonpartisan advocacy nonprofit here in the U.S., and they want their influencers to be authentic, but they have certain messaging that they have to stick to as a nonprofit, so we have to approve content. Do we have tips for them? Vivian, I see you nodding, so why don't you take it away?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Usually, this is how the industry. If you have to be rigid in your process, if you have to approve the content, that's something you have to pay for, right? Because you're adding extra work on the influencer's hand, because they have to provide the content, to wait for your feedback, to incorporate it one way or another. And that brings the question, do we write an agreement or contract? How many revisions can he or she do on the content, and so on and so forth. And that, as a nonprofit, you probably don't have the budgets or a number of things to go through. So my suggestion here would be this. Play the nonprofit card, right? We've done that a lot. A lot of influencers are actually very active, doing a lot of pro bono work for organizations. Big and small, we worked with UNICEF, with the World Food Program, with the World Cancer Awareness Day, and so on and so forth, as well as some smaller initiatives. But finding influencers that are, for whom the cause that you're present means something, there will be more likely to go the extra mile if you manage to do your identification very well, right? And then I would try, for as much as you can, not to involve an agreement, especially if there's no incentive, meaning if you don't get to pay the influencer, or if your value proposition offered is not something as tangible as money, that might be a little hard to convince influencers to work with you with an agreement. But yeah, I would try to get the most engaged and most aligned influencers you can find, to then push your message that way. I hope that helps answer your question. But yeah, I feel your pain, having run myself some pro bono campaigns in the past.
Yeah, the only thing I want to add to this is all of the customer matching works really great with nonprofits as well. So one thing nonprofits have are big lists, right? You have your donor list, you have your mailing list, you have your whatever different lists, and if you can utilize our services to do some influencer matching for you, that could be really good. So if you have 100,000 people on your mailing list, we might be able to find a good portion of them who are influencers. These are people who are already already on board with your message and have every desire in the world to volunteer for you. So we may as well leverage that first. So unfortunately, we are out of time, but I do really want to thank both Vivian and Nicole for coming today. I also want to encourage everyone, I want to leave everyone with this, which is a quote you may have seen us talk about before, but Enigma in Switzerland is talking about how we're in a post-truth world, but influencer marketing is one of the rare trust enablers that works. Which is to say, people are, as Vivian brought up, people have their guard up against advertising, but they want to hear what an influencer has to say to them. And that's part of the, to use an overused phrase, the secret sauce of influencer marketing. The last thing I want to say, if any of you are interested, we'll put a link in the chat as well, but you can book a personalized demonstration of what we do here at Upfluence and book some time with one of our sales consultants. We have a lot of information about various things that we can do, and we'd love to do a personalized demonstration of our tools for you. But I do want to thank Vivian and Nicole so much for being here today on this webinar, and thank you all for being here as well. And I want to wish everyone a happy holiday and stay safe. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Paul.
Bye-bye.